Peter Thiel, he has these famous lines of like, we wanted flying cars, but we got 140 characters instead, you know. And so the Balaji is like actually saying that you need 140 characters to build flying cars, because you need actually the ability to discuss these things freely. You need social media gave us the ability to fight a Gell-Mann amnesia effect, to actually let the plebs, let the proles speaking peer to peer to each other without intermediation, without the manufacturing of consent by the legacy media.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Mtambo Desk Podcast. My name is Duke Mtambo, and today I'm joined with Jakub Šimek, a co-founder of Se2 and an author of Wisdom Enterprise. Jakub recently wrote an article that caught my eye, in which he discussed the importance of innovation in bits for unlocking innovation in atoms. Jakub, welcome to the podcast again.
Hi, Jake. Good to see you.
Good to see you. It's always a pleasure having you on the show. So let's start by talking about Gell-Mann amnesia effect. Can you explain what that is and why it's relevant to our conversation today?
Yeah, it's like Gell-Mann or Gell-Mann. It's like he's a famous physicist, and he noticed this interesting fact that if you are a subject expert, let's say in physics or in foreign affairs, you know, you are reading an article about about the subject that you are an expert at, and you are kind of like wondering like, how could they have gotten it so wrong? You know, it's like you know, the article, it's like it's something like umbrellas are causing the rain, you know. It's like they have it all inverted, you know, in the article. Like if you are like understanding the subject, you often like find out that the article is like terrible. Like we had something similar, like somebody was like criticizing criticizing what we are doing like at Slovagate, you know, like, but it was like such a lame critique. Like you can see that the person doesn't understand how the process is being done. Like, I don't know, they were criticizing that some evaluators had like different opinions on some kind of committee, but it's like basically what you want people to have different opinions, so like there is a lively discussion, and not everyone should agree. And so, but it's often it's like so egregious or so wrong that it's literally like the metaphor of like, I don't know, umbrellas causing rain, you know. It's like it's totally wrong. And but when the person like the subject expert like reads this article, and they get like annoyed, like, or angry, like how could the newspapers go, or the journalists get it so wrong. And when they flipped the page, then now this is what the Gell-Mann amnesia thing is. They flip the page and they read, I don't know, article about foreign affairs, and they're like, oh wow, really, like this is how it happened, you know. They totally like forget that just a page before they were like angry, like that the article that they actually understand the subject, the article was like so wrong, like it couldn't be even like wronger or something. And now they're reading a second article which is not about their subject expertise, and they are like nodding like, oh, okay, this is how it happened, you know. So there's like amnesia, like they blank out, they like, yeah, they forget, like they were annoyed just a page
it's just like a kid. Yeah, like a kid, you will just beat him right now, and you know, you can she stopped crying when you show, like, for example, a chocolate or something like that.
Yeah, it's, or the kid hits himself or herself, and like, I don't know, in like 1 second it's like, I don't know, just running somewhere, yeah, being distracted by something else. So the kid stops crying immediately when, I don't know, something caught her attention. Yeah, so Yeah, so something similar, but like this is like Balaji has an explanation for why this Gelman amnesia effect happened in the traditional media or before social media. It's because of the topology of the traditional media. So they have like this hub and spoke topology. So the media, like let's say New York Times or Washington Post, they serve as a central hub for where these like individual experts, like they're like the single nodes, in the some kind of, and they communicate through this like central hub of New York Times. And the New York Times have their like columnists, their editors, and they're kind of like producing this kind of like canon or this kind of like discourse, like it's that's what Noam Chomsky calls the manufacturing of consent. So they're like, I don't know, there is some like expert writing about like why it's necessary to invade Iraq, for example, or why, I don't know, so it's like, and then there is a second expert who is also like writing about something else, I don't know, but it's like it's like a central hub, the New York Times, but it's also as a filter for like what is the Overton window, what is the acceptable opinion. And this opinion then shapes policy. It's like upstream of policy, like yeah. And so like, and Balaji has like it's connecting this Gelman amnesia or Gelman amnesia effect with basically this topology of traditional media, which is like hub and spoke. But like now with social media and also like with other decentralized kind of or decentralizing technologies, you can speak peer to peer. And so the like expert A doesn't need to go, let's say, through New York Times to communicate their message to get the distribution, but they can like communicate directly with their audience. And they can actually also communicate with another expert, like expert B. And so let's say, and this expert A is saying like, oh, how could these media got it so wrong? Like, but it's because it's like, it's total, they got it totally inverted. And now the expert B is also like criticizing, let's say, another article about his subject matter. And then there is like expert C, and so you see like actually the media is getting like loads of things wrong like all the time. And so that's like one reason why the trust in media is like cratering, it's falling down.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a great point. And what about speaking of regulation? We have seen some controversy, controversies around social media platforms and their role in shaping public opinion. How do you see it shaping the democratic process?
Yeah, it's like Balaji uses the term ultra democracy. So like their social media is like ultra democracy, because they are like super democracy, meaning like everybody has a voice. Like before that you had like the freedom of speech, but it kind of meant like you can you can stand below the bridge and shout what you want, but it's like nobody was listening to because like there is this saying like, don't argue with a man who is buying ink by the barrel, so who is buying like bulk lots of ink, because they're like they're owning a newspaper, so but it was like very expensive to get a broadcasting license, like a TV license, or a like to buy a newspaper. So you or start your own newspaper. But now you can start your blog, you can start your, I don't know, YouTube channel, Instagram, whatever what kind of channel you want. You can post videos directly on Twitter, you can write long form even on Twitter or Substack. And often these services, not often, but some of these, like Substack, is built on top of an open protocol, global and open protocol. In the case of Substack is email. And you have we discussed before, let's say Noster, some kind of like a new protocol that has natively like Bitcoin Lightning integration. So, but okay, these are all kind of examples of how the proles, the proletariat, the regular people, how they can like discuss with each other, disintermediating the speech police,
Mm-hmm.
disintermediating the media, just like speaking directly to each other, like figuring out like, okay, the media got this wrong. And okay, it has like many downsides, especially the social media, like they basically draw the traditional media to produce all these like clickbait, and also like there is lots of like misinformation or disinformation also on social media. It's a lot of noise, but there is also a lot of signal, and there is also a lot of like weak signal, and there are many views, and you can kind of you can pick what you believe in and what you like. So yeah,
Yeah.
there. So but basically, the idea of Balaji or this article, like 140 characters will give us flying cars, is like just like many things before social media, you couldn't like criticize agencies like the FDA, like, Food and Drug Administration. Like you couldn't criticize them like of being slow when approving new medicines. It takes like 10 years and it costs like $1 billion or more. And and if you calculate how many lives could be saved if it's like much faster. And so like this was like, first of all, it was like outside of Overton window, let's say 10 years ago, to criticize like these kind of experts like at FDA, says Balaji. But it's also it wasn't even much like possible. Okay, you got like the beginning of social media, but like before social media, it wasn't like, it was like, what would you write an op-ed in like some kind of op-ed piece in opinion piece in and send it to a traditional
Mm-hmm.
media, or maybe put it on your own blog. Like, yeah, it could be, but it wasn't like, you know now people are used to write like whatever they want, just like before their breakfast, on Twitter, and it's like it's and they get feedback. But before it was like very difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, and now we have seen with Elon Musk takeover of Twitter, social media can be a powerful tool for public discourse too. It also allows people to criticize public policy and hold those in power accountable, as you have said. But it's also important that we have free social media where people can express their opinions without fear of censorship or retribution. Like, say, Dr. J was shadow banned for his opinion on prolonged lockdowns during the COVID-19 pandemic. And that's just one example of how censorship can still stifle public debate.
Yeah, it's a good example. Jay Bhattacharya, I think is his name, and he's a professor at Stanford. And yeah, he was criticizing lockdowns from this kind of like a social kind of cost of doing these prolonged lockdowns. So he was criticizing it, especially around the world, like how the supply chains will get disrupted, how much, like, I don't know, there will be like malnourishment will and hunger and domestic violence, and actually children not learning, so the school results yeah, will get worse. And so
Mhm.
if I remember correctly, like he had like many of these kind of like points, and he was like
Yeah.
shadow banned on Twitter, like deboosted, and they were like, and so and if this is like the elite of the elite, like the Stanford professor having like, okay, maybe he was having like some kind of like a bit of socialist views or whatever, but just like a regular like left of center views, like just like caring about people, caring about how the regular people, especially all around the world, like how they will be affected by lockdowns and by these supply chain disruptions,
Mm-hmm.
and what will be the mental health of children be like, especially after COVID vaccine, like why there were like all these lockdowns. It's not really um, yeah, clear. It was mostly just like a policy that persisted beyond its usefulness. So and even the lockdowns by themselves, they were copied from China, like through northern Italy. Okay, but northern Italy copied it through from China. So it was like the West was actually copying from China, and now actually also with all these like social credit kind of thing, like all with Twitter files, it's also kind of like something that the Chinese were doing before,
Mm-hmm.
like and it's very close to like the social credit system, and it's maybe like it's some kind of like a half measure. It's like the west is doing like these half measures of like what China was doing previously. So the Western lockdowns were like half measures of what the Chinese lockdowns were. They were like much stricter, but like I don't know if the half measures are working. It's just like pissing off more people and not being that effective. And similarly, like with these like social credit kind of systems, like trying to like deboost or shadow ban some people based on their opinions or like who they are, and doing it in some kind of like clandestine and not like really well understood way how you are doing it. And if you are doing it even to like some kind of like Stanford professor, then like or even to like some random Twitter account of like 1,000 followers or less, or like 100 followers or less, so and it's very often some kind of like security services like asking Twitter employees to ban like some really small accounts or
Mm-hmm.
some big accounts like a Stanford professor. Then it's like I don't know, this is not really the democracy that we used to like and love. It's something else, and it's kind of a bit lame because like in China they would do it like at least more thoroughly, like, or I don't know, it's just like why are you trying to repeat what China is doing? It's just this should be the democracy. This should be like the freedom of speech country. So why are you doing something like China, and you even can't do it well? So why are you even trying? And so okay, this was like the Twitter files, and now with CBDC, it sounds like something similar, like with Fed now, what Balaji is like criticizing with his like series, like now with this
It's,
bit signal.
and it's calling it a digital lockdown.
Yeah, digital lockdown. Yeah, so now they're doing like again some kind of half measure, which technically won't be a CBDC, but it will. He calls it like CBDC light, but okay, technically it's not a CBDC, but it allows for some kind of tracking and maybe also like counseling and
Kind
or
of social crediting system.
yeah, some kind of unbanking, but like technically it's not like a CBDC, it's not like central bank digital currency, but it's more programmable, I guess, or it's like something. It allows like for it's like faster, and it allows for some kind of tracking, if I understand correctly. So the Fed now. So it's some kind of half measure of like what the digital yuan is. So okay, so you have like digital lockdowns, like a half measure. You had physical lockdowns as a half measure, and you had also like shadow banning as a half measure of. And all these half measures were copied from China,
Mm-hmm.
and even like it's even acknowledged with some of them,
Yeah.
Mm, the I think yeah, now Biden wants to tax crypto mining, like Bitcoin miners,
Mm-hmm.
and the White House, there was something like shared on Twitter, like I don't know if it was a press release or something, but it was like acknowledging that the China also like was doing something against like miners, so like the Bitcoin miners, so like they're mentioning China as an example
So it's
by
like America is becoming a mirror of China. So China is reflecting. and America is like the media, which is
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah. It's
I,
like, but China is often something like more of a like a bright sun, or like the civilization on the rise, or the country like the ascending world, and the U.S. The old establishment in the U.S. is more like the Black Mirror version, you know. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, because okay, the Chinese are quite oppressive, and they got much worse like over the couple of years, they got much more nationalistic and like kind of mm, yeah, chauvinistic and militaristic over the recent years, but they delivered like a huge progress, for hundreds of millions of people, and they also, like, I don't know, built like 38,000 kilometers of high speed rails. So it's like more, it's like it's even like difficult to grasp for like a normal person if you don't. I mean, the second best country in like high speed rail is Spain with 2,000 kilometers. So like they built like 38,000, and it basically, I think it's good approximation. Also, Balaji talks about it, that probably they're like 1,000 times more efficient or better at building infrastructure. So if something maybe between 100 times and 1,000 times, definitely. So they can build like or snap together like a train station in 9 hours. It's like some example of like how they were building it, and it takes like, I don't know, 10 years or or how many years in a couple of years, in some Western country.
mm,
So it's like a whole of society approach, and mm, yeah, it's like a lot of things need to have like either smart regulation or deregulation, or like people working like 3 shifts or something. I don't know. It's like crazy how, or being like assembled on spot, but like being manufactured in some kind of like modular fashion. But the result is like they can really produce like 100 times or even 1,000 times faster and better than in some Western countries. So mm, yeah, I mean, so the question is like, why do you want to be, or why are you getting closer to their kind of like authoritarian measures,
mhm.
and losing kind of the image of the open kind of country, the freedom of speech kind of country. So you're losing the upside as a civilization, uh, the Western civilization. We
Mhm.
are losing the upside, like of like, okay, we attract the creative people, we attract like immigrants from all around the world, because we are like free, and we allow, let's say, we have some resources to support like some talented people, and creative people. And I mean, if you are kind of, yeah, behaving more and more like China, but you can't deliver, like you can't build like them, then it's kind of, yeah, why are you doing it? It's like you're losing the upside, and you are like showing all your downside. Like you can't build as fast as them,
Mhm.
but you can ban as fast. You even can't ban as fast as them, or as thoroughly as them. So you are kind of you are ending up with some kind of half measures, and these half measures are angering, or it's like hitting some kind of like a nest of wasps, or I don't know how you call it. It's
Yeah.
just like you are just like making lots of people angry, but you are not as thorough as, or ruthless as the Chinese. So it's just like, I think it's like a really bad approach, like
I,
this
I
whole thing.
I think America has reached the optimum point where, like, I think they're not more innovative, So the only thing they can do is just try, maybe create uh, problems, or try to copy some small behaviors from different countries, but at the same time, like, so I'm trying to think, it's like they have reached that optimum point where, like, they can't grow anywhere anymore, or they can't innovate very quickly than they used to be, during like the World War I or World War II, where they were, they manufactured the
Yeah, yeah,
weapons and all that.
they definitely can't build as fast as they used to, like
Yeah.
it's like 10 times or 100 times or maybe even 1,000 times like slower. So there might be many reasons for it. Like it's I don't think there is a clear explanation. And there is maybe a counterpoint to it, which is like Elon Musk or Palmer Luckey of Anduril. But the fact that you can count these, I don't know, Peter Thiel, he has these famous lines of like, we wanted flying cars, but we got 140 characters instead, and so the
Hmm.
Balaji is like actually saying that you need 140 characters to build flying cars, because you need actually the ability to discuss these things freely. You need social media gave us the ability to fight Gell-Mann amnesia effect, to actually let the plebs, let the proles speaking peer to peer to each other without intermediation, without the manufacturing of consent by the legacy media. And
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
but
and
also it
you
also
needed
brings
this. Yeah,
yeah, it also brings the other concept of Balaji, the ascending versus declining world, So it's like
yeah,
America, they're the declining, at the tipping point. But we are seeing
yeah,
like
yeah.
countries like China, which were way poor, and some countries like in Latin or El Salvador now picking up, or some countries like in Africa.
Exactly, yeah. And within the US, you can like, okay, there are some places that are like ascending world, like Miami or Florida. They are like, I don't know, they even actually have their high-speed rail there, and and they're like pro-business, pro-crypto, and like pro-civilization, and of course, like some of their ideas might be too conservative for me or whatever, but like they're at least like trying to be different and like fighting the old regime. But
Mm-hmm.
then you have, yeah, but as a whole, yeah, the US and especially like San Francisco is definitely a part of the declining world, says Balaji. So because actually it lost a lot of people after COVID, and the commercial real estate
Mm-hmm.
prices are cratering.
Yeah.
The cell phone coverage, it's like it's a 33% of what it used to be in
Yeah.
the city center before COVID.
Yeah.
It's
And
it means
even
like 70% down. It's crazy.
yeah,
It's
and even
it,
70% of offices are vacant.
yeah, I think it's 30% of offices, but it's because of but it's really super high. It's even during the dot-com bust wasn't as high. It's super high and it's growing, so it might get even worse. And there is some kind of sale of a building uh, that that cost like 300 million. It's like some big office building
Mhm.
before COVID, and now the expected price is like 60 million. So it's like 80% reduction in San Francisco. And it's also mostly because of drugs and crime there. And also because lots of talented people left for Miami or Austin. So it's crazy because like just to see like this can happen to a city in 2 years. It's
And it's just
amazing.
because of analog regulators.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah. Okay, but anyhow, but this part, okay, was like about like how you need actually social media, and maybe in the near future we will have like some decentralized social media, like we discussed Noster before, and there is Forecaster and DSO and some others. And I think it's great that people can experiment with this, like especially if this centralized social media get captured. So we are happy for Elon Musk to be in Twitter, at Twitter, and the chief twit, or like,
Yeah.
yeah, how he calls himself, because at least it's like a bit freer, and people need to discuss these ideas, and especially discuss how regulation is how regulation is like creating stagnation, technological stagnation, and so these eventually might give us flying cars, because like these might pressure people to focus on technological progressivism and technological progress, and and push for innovations in these areas and deregulation or smart regulation in these areas. So it's like Twitter is super expensive. I mean, expensive, super important, So therefore, also Elon Musk, who believes in free speech, he bought it. It's for I don't know how many billion, 40
44,
billion or
44 billion.
44. Okay, yeah. So it's super important. So it's not the dichotomy of what Peter Thiel talked about, like. We wanted flying cars, but we got 140 characters instead. Balaji says this is not the dichotomy, or these things are connected. You need free social media to actually get to technological progress and to have flying cars eventually.
I think it's definitely a complex issue, but let's shift our focus to the future. Balaji argues that we need a special innovation zone for longevity, where we can exit the global harmonization of regulators like the FDA or EMA. Can you maybe explain what he means by that?
Mm-hmm. Right. So especially, yeah, exactly. This is maybe an example of like you can create content. Let's say a podcast, like Balaji has his like the Network State podcast, and then you can share like this anchor content. You can create like some small clips and create some kind of like micro content, right, and share it on social media. So you have this like idea of like content, capital, and community, or like paper, like a newspaper, paper, party, and polity. And so basically it's like, I don't know, the communists, they have their like Pravda newspaper, right? And then they created like USSR, so and you have like or the old establishment has like the New York Times and the Washington Post, and they are creating some kind of content, some ideas, and now these ideas are influencing political parties or party, because it's like the content is like upstream of these like politicians, and then it kind of creates a certain type of polity, or like certain type of population and in people and like a nation, so it can create like a, instead of United States, you have like the divided states, because there is a lot of clickbait and people are like fighting all these cultural issues and topics. But imagine you would have like content like a podcast, or even movies or short movies discussing or fighting for technological progress and progressivism, and suddenly you would have you would also had like some kind of like meta political party, let's say, or like some think and do tank, so like think tank, but also like do tank, like just creating like model legislation, and actually lobbying or advocating for like some special innovation zones in certain areas, so yeah, like Balaji had the president of Palau on his podcast, and they were discussing like this e-residence. So they have like e-residency, like digital residency on, and also like with the that is on chain, so it's connected like on chain, so you can have like you can use your Ethereum wallet and you can get like their like ID, so it's like KYC. It's like providing KYC, and then you can use their ID on like 90% of various crypto exchanges, so like they provide the KYC, but they give you like the digital residency program. So like that's like just like a small kind of part of like what could be the bigger picture here, and this would be like special economic zone, but focusing on innovation and technological progress. So we could call it like special innovation zone, So let's say there could be a special innovation zone for self-driving cars or fintech or crypto. So now the United Arab Emirates are like starting some kind of like, they call it like free crypto zone. So it's like or crypto free zone. So it's like, but like a zone where actually crypto folks are free to experiment, or like some kind of like a special innovation zone focused on crypto. So like that's like one way how to look at it. So you need to create content and then some kind of tech community, and also invest some capital uh, into advocacy for and into production of model legislation. There is, like Balaji also mentioned, there is this Cicero Institute, and they are producing this like model legislation, and it can and you can like advocate for these special innovation zones in parallel. Like you can approach like various, like let's say countries or small countries like Palau or Slovakia, or even could be big countries or bigger countries like Kenya, but like let's say or Rwanda, a relatively small country, like they have there are some experiments with the drone delivery of medicines. So you can have like this kind of like special innovation zones. And you can work with these jurisdictions in parallel, so meaning like working with various these jurisdictions at the same time. So but on creating these special innovation zones. That's the idea. But like social media play a big role in this, because let's say you can't vote for a president of Palau, but you can upvote him on Twitter. That's the idea.
Well,
So you
nice.
can you can like love bomb some people, meaning I mean, but like, to be honest about it, right? Like not to do it in some kind of like tricky or kind of like instrumental way, but like to like really mean it, like, okay, but it's really great, if somebody somebody mentions like Bitcoin, it's like what is it, the Democrat, the Bob Kennedy, right? The
Yeah,
Democratic
Robert.
candidate for,
Yeah, Robert
Robert
F.
Kennedy.
Kennedy.
Yeah, like he will be speaking on some Bitcoin conference in Miami, right, or something. And when
Yeah.
he's like positive about Bitcoin, he gets like all these likes and reshares. And I don't think like people are doing it like as an instrumental kind of just being cynical. I don't think people are cynical about it. It's just like they really loved anyone who is just like who is
Uh,
sharing pro crypto or pro Bitcoin message. So
mhm.
but so it's true. So you can actually upvote. You can upvote Bob Kennedy or president of Palau, but you can't vote for him if you are not a U.S. citizen. If you are based in Slovakia, as me or you in Kenya, right? But you can still upvote these people on social media. So therefore, that's the connection. The social media are important. Model legislation and special innovation zones are important as well.
Mhm. And you also talk about the need for highly aligned communities in their cloud and network archipelagos. How can this economy, I mean, how can this community work? Can you tell us maybe a little bit?
Right. So it's like, okay,
Because,
the
okay, maybe I
start.
can expand because there's also, you said like longevity is $100 trillion wealth unlock, and to unlock it, we need to make the moral innovation of self-improvement is good and create higher line communities in the cloud and on the land. So maybe if you can
Yeah,
tell,
yeah.
yeah.
So 100 trillion unlock. Okay, so that's maybe the China after Deng Xiaoping, and his moral innovation of profit is good. So they still kept the front end of like the CCP and all the star and what is it? I even can't. They have all these images of like the flag, and they kept everything, but they changed the backend or slowly, by through these special economic zones. So they slowly allowed capitalism into China through these special economic zones, and so they kept the front end, but they changed the back end. Actually, what's happening in the US, it's like the opposite, almost like. Or actually, it's kind of similar, like they have the front end. Also, like, but actually, it's like the US after 2020, or even many Western democracies, like don't feel the same. It's like it's not as free as we used to be. Like it's a bit different. So, but in the case of like China, okay, and this represented this $100 trillion unlock. So over the decades, I don't know, this was in the 70s, and now China is like richer, maybe over like 100. It's like 100 trillions, maybe what they gained over that period. It's like lots of money. It's lots of money. And Balaji uses this example of like 100 trillion unlock. That's what longevity could be. If you had this like moral innovation of my body, my choice, willing patient, willing doctor, you can have like various, like, I don't know, continuous glucose monitors, various like fitness trackers, various things where you can measure your body, and you can use like various, like, I don't know, off-label medicines to to like boost your longevity in some kind of like using science, right, and some like rigorous experiments. um and so like this is the idea basically behind how to create network states in a gradual fashion. So you start as a startup society, and this could be started by anyone with a laptop, and then you have like this network union, which is the as you mentioned, the highly aligned community. Which is much more difficult to create. It's like maybe you would need a new type of social network, like where some team dashboards would be incentivized. So you are working as a team, and you see like how aligned the community is, let's say by the engagement rate. So like if the engagement rate is almost like 100%, it's like, imagine you have a trade union, and when everybody is like on strike, so it means like everybody's on strike, it's like collective action. But on Twitter, the engagement rate is like, let's say 1%, or or 0.1%. So it's like if you have a million followers, you get like 1,000 likes. So it's like 0.1%. It's a very low engagement rate. But imagine if you had like some kind of social network, like for network states, for building network states, that would allow you to have like this network union type of to build a network union, right? So I mean, probably you could build it on Discord, but like probably not. I don't know. It's possible you would need a new service for it. And then this cloud community can create a cloud. It's like cloud first, but not land, and land last, but not land never. So eventually you create like a network archipelago. You can create. Not every network union needs this, but like if you are focused on longevity, you want probably like some kind of like healthy living spaces, spaces where you have all these like the brand new technologies, where you can maybe bulk buy together these like technologies. And where you have like some moral innovation, like, okay, longevity is good, or like tracking your health is good. Using new devices, or and so that's like the gradual kind of approach how to get towards the network state, basically, around longevity.
Okay. I think that's a great ending of this podcast. Thank you for sharing your insight, Jakub. It's always a pleasure having you on the podcast every time.
Yeah, thanks, Yuki. It was great talking to you.
Well, that brings us to the end of this episode. We hope you enjoy the conversation with Jakub. Please don't forget to subscribe, give this episode a thumbs up, and be sure to come back next week for another episode. Until then, this is Mtambo, and don't forget to do good always.